In this episode, we will be talking about the adaptation of a great Russian classic, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, done by the BBC. This is a mini series which consists of 6 episodes, each of an hour's duration. We often associate wars to be of kings and queens, conquests, and the building of new empires. But has anyone ever wondered what would be the life like of the soldiers in these wars, or the families that get affected during these wars? We all get so caught up in history lessons of revering the extraordinary that we often tend to ignore the middle class of society in that time. What I have noticed in my time reading a little Russian literature, Dostoevsky in particular, is that they adhere to all these sort of people. Think about it for a second. If everyone in the world could play chess like Bobby Fischer, is there really any point like playing like Bobby Fischer? But despite that, one might have thought very highly of themselves, and society could have expected a lot of themselves. But and put in all the effort, and they did all the effort and all the work, but despite all of that, they still end up failing, or they become just like everyone else. According to most of the internet, the saying always goes like this: if there is a will, there is a way. But humans don't have souls made of rubber. We are reactive to the circumstances that come our way. We often have a strong desire for something, but something so unexpected happens and our entire sense of priorities and duties change. Yes, indeed, this is rare, but it still happens. Sometimes, for some individuals, a few times, but others, many. In this generation of mine, we often hate being associated as being mediocre because it shows that all our efforts and sufferings, the losses that we have had, are all in vain because there will be nothing there for us to even be remembered for, and everything would be meaningless. I mean, none of us are really willing to experience pain if all that pain were to be meaningless, right? They had no point and a greater meaning to it. Hence comes the fear of just being good, not great at the thing that you love so much, and all the things that you have lost were just useless. That's probably why we hate mediocrity. To me, we are never told in schools about these group of people, you know, that I have told you about, that I have mentioned about, described in some strange way, I guess if that's a way of putting it, of these sort of people in our lectures. You're always told about the great thinkers of science and the revolutionaries in history. It's only in literature do you find stories and insights about such people. I think they're just as important as the great people that we study in literature, in history, or in science. They're like, in that way we can learn a lot about them in life and how to live life, just like, and they impact you so much on such a deep level, like they can, and hence can be a very good guide and be very motivational, just like how Charles Darwin was for biology. In this mini series, you will explore the life of 4 families: the Rostovs, the Kuragins, the Bezukovs, and the Belinskis. In the beginning, we are met with this young man who was studying abroad, Pierre, who comes back to Russia as his father was nearly dying. His father had a huge inheritance, which many families were having an eye on. Nobody knows who is in his will to inherit such wealth. Naturally, as Pierre wasn't there, Vasily Kuragin, the head of the Kuragin family, was trying to fabricate the evidence of him inheriting all the money. But Pierre returns swiftly before this action is committed, and it was revealed then almost immediately that he was the next inheritor of Bezukov's wealth, and hence Pierre becomes the next head of the Bezukov family. Naturally, Kuragin, being disappointed that he could not get the money, lures Pierre into marrying his daughter through her curvaceous appearance. But everything that Pierre wants, like having children, helping the poor by some form of community service, as he believes that he has too much money with him, was rejected by his wife Helene. Helene also took part in many sexual encounters while Pierre was outside trying to help the less wealthy parts and portions of Russia. Naturally, Pierre was joked at and made fun of outside of his house and in external society for being a terrible family man. And when he's back at home, his wife would make fun of him was wasting his time and wasting their wealth for some meek and ordinary useless people. It's like wherever he goes, he is constantly being made fun of. His life is miserable, but he has two friends from two different families. One was Natasha from the Rostovs and Andrei from the Belinskis. And in this episode of The Idiot, we'll be focusing primarily on Andrei. It's important to note that it was only a short period of time before Pierre's arrival that Napoleon actually attacked Russia. And Natasha's brother, along with Andrei, are part of the army soldiers trying to fight Napoleon's army. Now, Napoleon's army was very strong, and Russia had no chance to win. But Andrei was very quick to realize that there was some form of opening and some form of way that they could at least hit Napoleon's army, to catch his attention a little. And he brought and allied a bunch of soldiers, and he tried to attack the Napoleon army. He failed, but it was a valiant and a brave act. But through his failure and his bravery, it was supposedly made a rumor that Andrei had died in the battlefield. And at that time, his wife, who was pregnant at home, died in grief, but was successful in giving birth to the child of Andrei. And there was no harm for the child. He was quite healthy. He came into this world healthy. But at the same time, Andrei didn't die, as I have mentioned. He was alive, but he was deeply injured. And over the course of a few months, the injury that was on his legs started to recover, and he can soon again walk again. Knowing that his wife died and being lost to the French army, but at the same time, none of the officers in the Russian army, or of the people, even respected his act for what he was doing and gave him like a permanent position in the Russian army, like a lieutenant or maybe a general of that sort. He felt gravely disappointed. He felt like he was a total failure. He felt like he was not being recognized and there was no point to his living. Right? He felt wronged in some way or another. And when he was part of the army, there was this general, his name General Kutuzov. He said that he's going to report whatever Andrei has done on that day in the battlefield to the Tsar of Russia, with the hopes and hoping that he can get maybe a position as a general or a lieutenant. But it has almost been 2 years since then, and he has not gotten any single letter or any form of soldier from the noble family of his greater position that he has received. Nada, nothing. So he felt like he's a terrible failure, and maybe his act was not that great enough. Now, but even though he was so depressed and he was not having any sense of belief in his life, he still continued to support and help his family. He would build a house by cutting some wood every day from the trees and design a small little house where the family could live in during the summers. And he would always try whatever he can to support his sisters, Sonia, and his father, who's very old, who's a very old but retired army officer. Pierre soon meets Andrei, and they discuss with each other how life has been going for each of them. But this is where I want to talk about one thing. Going down the path of nihilism ends a person to end up doing nothing with their lives. It just makes them become skeptics with no real objectives. And Pierre was noticing this with Andrei. But as I have also mentioned, that Andrei is not lost all hope, but it genuinely does seem like he has. Pierre wishes that his friend does get better and asks for him to write one more letter to the general and try to come to St. Petersburg where he lives. And it was only in a few weeks' time that Andrei receives the letter. And once he receives the letter, he says that he was granted a position of a lieutenant or a general. I'm not quite sure, but I do know that he does get a promotion and he's now earning a good amount of money to support his family for a good amount of time. He was wearing very good clothes. He was very happy. And when he went to St. Petersburg, was offered through Pierre, he also met this girl from the Rostovs family, Natasha, and they were very soon to be engaged. But all of this happiness is also short lived. Now, if you may recall Natasha's brother, who also went to fight the war. But unlike Andrei, who helped save many soldiers through sacrificing his own, he just did his duty. Hence, once it was over, he couldn't secure a real position in the army. Like like anything, like he was just there to support because there was a lack of real trained soldiermen. So in order for that, they needed a lot of male people in the city of Russia or in Russia in order to fight Napoleon's army. Just brute number of people. They'll have to give a tactical advantage. So as soon as Napoleon and the Tsar had a temporary treaty to not continue the war, even and which also inadvertently made his position in securing a job also to be gone. Hence, it was over. He couldn't secure a real position or a real job for the family. Dismayed by his failed prospects, he went on to gamble his family's money. For the next few years, we see the Rostovs living bankrupt and in the worst of situations until Andrei gives a glimpse of a better life. The most important thing one must see here is that all the three families that I have talked about till now, they all have been experiencing a lot of pain and torment. None of them are really happy per se, where they feel like that their lives are somehow worth living. The only family that can be described as happy are the Kuragins, who are rolling on the money Pierre had inherited and living the most hedonistic lifestyle one can possibly imagine. A life filled with drugs, sex, and parties that none could have ever thought of. But still, despite all their sadness, they are still living life. Pierre is doing so through his belief in God. Andrei, because of his duties of being a father and a caretaker. And lastly, we see Natasha and her brother, now who is now filled with shame and regret for his actions, but doing their best in order to help their father pay back the money that they had lost. At the same time, living through whatever minimal expenses they still have. What happens next is Andrei needs to meet his father, and his father despised his relationship with the Rostovs, saying that they aren't the best of people. He says that Andrei can only marry Natasha as long as she does not be in any relationship with anyone for an entire year. But if she does even that for even a second, the marriage is cancelled. But more precisely, Andrei and Natasha can never meet in person. You can think of this to be very similar to the condition made in my earlier episode of The Idiot, The White Nights by Dostoevsky, uh, where Nastenka and her, what's that word called? I just used it. Where Nastenka and the person you're about to marry, yeah. So basically, Nastenka and her, that very treaty that you have, that she gave a promise that I won't marry you, but he never comes for an entire year, something like that. So Natasha is disappointed hearing this coming from Andrei. She tries writing letters to him, but his father prevents those letters to be seen from Andrei. Andrei, on the other hand, refuses to see any other woman, as he believes he is truly in love with Natasha. A whole year goes by, but just when it was ending, Natasha gets sexually harassed by Helene's brother. It was spread across St. Petersburg that Natasha was in a relationship with Anatol Kuragin, and this was all heard, and all of these rumors spread to Andrei as well. Andrei was furious and cancelled the engagement that he had with her. Now, as Pierre knew both Natasha and Andrei, he tried to make it even by telling each party of how gravely mistaken they are for the other side not loving them back. He even asks Andrei as to why he never responded to any letter Natasha has written for him. He treats this inquiry as a piece of conspiracy to ruin his supposed moral behavior, as he has never been aware of any letter being given to him. Through this, his friendship with Pierre ends. Pierre consoles Natasha, telling him that she was a good girl and she did nothing wrong. I mean, This guy has to be the madman here. I mean, come on, not visiting your own fiance for a whole year and not writing to you and not writing to her as well and expecting so much from someone. Andre falls back into a pit of pain and self-hate. He wishes to kill Anatole Kuragin once he really discovers the truth that Natasha was actually being sexually harassed and was actually not in a relationship with him at all. He goes back home and inquires about his father about these letters that has been sent to him, and now he becomes aware that these letters were actually being sent to him. He also realizes that his sister has constantly been trying to make him get these letters, but his father kept preventing her from doing so by making her feel that she can never understand family matters, as she is a woman, and because she is a woman, and and furthermore accentuates how worthless she is because she fails to get anyone to marry her because of her lackluster in looks, and gaslights her into believing that her lack of accomplishing anything in her life is because of her not understanding any of the family matters. And hence that was really why Andre was never given any of the letters Natasha was giving to him. Hearing all this, Andre feels like his whole world has collapsed. His entire family, the only thing that has been there with him, has now betrayed him. Napoleon now attacks Russia, this time with the hopes of conquering it, no longer threatening the Tsar or bothering him with some form of treaty. Now, I'd like to really accentuate something. Andre was depressed not only here, but he's also depressed before, right? And in both situations, there is a form of self hatred that he has towards himself. And not only was there a form of self hatred, he also felt that he has been completely wronged and his whole world has been tarnished. And also, his sense of objective in both scenarios were completely different. In the first instance, his objective of why he was so depressed and sad was because all the expectations of his dreams and ambitions were gone. And in the second case, his family turning on against him. But really, if you think about it, there are two things that are similar: self-hate and a lot of and not of and a lack of realizing that of conversing with the other person, or maybe a miscommunication perhaps. Actually, miscommunication more on the second part, but focus on the self-hate part because I'm going to be touching upon that very soon. Andre decides to make this war that Napoleon has had, and now he is going to take part in this war, as a place where he can commit suicide, but would only die in battle. It also turns out that Antone Kuragin, Helena's brother, would also be fighting this war as a soldier. He thought that he could use this opportunity to kill this vile, disgusting man. The war began, and a bombshell fell right in front of Andre, and instead of running away, he leaps onto it. Once he was there under critical condition, severely wounded, he describes seeing a fly and telling how much the fly was telling him that it loves him. And then, as he was, as you know, as a doctor was tending his wounds from the battleground, he saw the individual whom his lover committed an affair with. He was in a far more pitiful state. His legs were getting amputated and was about to die. Yet after seeing him, the same feeling arises, the feeling of forgiveness. And as he saw him there, he was no longer hating this guy, but just loving him, strangely enough. The person who had brought him so much pain in his heart all this while, now, while being in a state of absolute hopelessness, he sees that everything that was bringing him pain could be gone if he had seen love everywhere. As he was put to a place to sleep away from the battlefield, the place he was sent to tend his wounds happened to be Natasha's home, the girl he loved. As he looked at her, he forgave her, and she wept, and just like that, they were back together again. Just like anything else, he was relieved from all of his troubles, even when nothing has really changed, just by forgiving almost everybody. What good can all this hate and angst bring? It takes you nowhere. If people were to use me, let them use me. If they were to take something from me in an unfair way, let that be. Now, coming away from the story, let me tell you what I took away from this scene. All my problems would vanish if I were to consider myself as a part of society, rather than seeing the actions I do to be for my self satisfaction, to see it as meaning as impacting those around me. The whole idea of loss and grief has now evaporated. There is nothing really for me to lose, as it was never really mine to begin with. These clothes I wear come from a skilled manufacturer, and that came from the efforts of so many other people I neither know nor have I ever met. So if people are to take this one shirt away from me, does it really matter? Probably not. I just had something, but that something was never really mine to begin with. Just as much as I call it mine, the workers and individuals who brought it together can call it theirs as well. So can hundreds and thousands of people can now lay claim for one single object. All in all, nothing really matters, and nothing is really yours if you are to look at it objectively. The moment you associate something to be yours and to be attached to those things, you will experience pain and grief. The ancient Greek philosophers had warned us about this very thing, that one needs to be careful as to what they attach their lives onto, because once that is gone, the grief that comes with it is too much to bear. I'm not saying that one must live a life of being a complete monk, completely detached from society, like the Buddha had stipulated. No, but to hold grudges against whatever has gone against your wishes should not be the case. What I'm saying is, you might have done everything you can, you have done your best, and you have every reason to feel that you deserve it. And it's very likely that if you don't get it, you feel angry, you feel hateful. But maybe that's exactly the reason why you're having so much pain in life, having all that hate and grudges. Otherwise, and we might end up just becoming like Andre in War and Peace. One must learn to cherish the good times you had from the experiences you had in life, and not to hold any grudges to the bad times that came from those experiences. If you can learn to live life by learning to appreciate the highs of every experience that comes in your way and actively seeking and looking for a new experience when those things are coming to an end and an absolute sorrow and pain, then life somehow becomes somewhat livable and you can be content with however you are. In short, life is a series of experiences and you must not be attached to any one of those things. And one thing we must all understand is that as long as there is life, there is love. And as long as there is love, there is always something you can do. And the object for that love also keeps changing. I would love to continue talking about this show and how so many characters give you an insight about what life is, but I think that it'll take a very long time to actually cover all of that and with a proper in detailed analysis. But if you have watched this show or even read the book, please share your thoughts and takeaways from this TV series in the comment section below. And if you saw me constantly putting my hand in the middle of the recording right now, it's probably because my mother was thinking what the hell I was doing talking to myself in my room. Forgive me on that front. Anyhow, thank you for sticking around for this episode. See you next time. Peace.